Hello, everybody. I'm Jerry Bodecker. I'm the founding chair of the Mental Wellness Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute. And it's a pleasure to welcome you all today to the second of the Mental Wellness Initiative's webinar series on pathways to mental well-being. Joining us today to present on wellness coaching and a very expanded vision of what that entails is my co-chair in the Mental Wellness Initiative, Alina Hernandez. Alina is an award-winning innovator and wellness program creator. She is a certified design thinker and a Mayo Clinic certified health and wellness coach. Alina is a member of advisory boards and is co-chair of both the Touchless and the Mental Wellness Initiatives of the Global Wellness Institute. Alina, as many of you will know, is sought after for her thought leadership and capacity for multi-interdisciplinary application and translation of big ideas into wellness business solutions. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Alina and invite you, Alina, to enlighten us with this webinar on wellness coaching. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jerry, and welcome to everyone who is listening today and perhaps in the future with the recording. So I'd like to begin my presentation, which we're calling Sustained Behavior Change from Self-Care to Wellness Programming. So many of you have perhaps asked yourself, what is health and wellness coaching? And while some of you might know exactly what that is, I thought I'd pop up on the screen the definition that the Mayo Clinic gives to health and wellness coaching. This is the institution where I was certified as a health and wellness coach. So they say that wellness coaching is a fluid, multi-dimensional skill. You, as the coach, are always striving to help someone progress in the areas they are stuck. This is done by always viewing the client as the expert in their own life, listening to them intently and without judgment, and finding sources of inspiration that will help them progress. They end by saying the role of the coach is to help the individual identify personal reasons for pursuing greater wellness and to enhance motivation for behavior change using evidence-based strategies. As we all know, mental wellness there is no wellness without mental wellness. And it's needless to say that this is a skill set that is applied first and foremost in the mental wellness space and then in the general wellness landscape. And that by understanding the principles behind health and wellness coaching, this is an integral part of mental wellness. So what is the evidence behind coaching for behavioral change? Years ago, I became very fascinated by change on a large scale. And some of you may be aware of behavioral psychological stage development experts such as Maslow, one of the most famous, who wrote about how people change on a wide scope. But I was really fascinated in what is the nitty-gritty that actually moves the bar, the needle. And this is why I pursued the knowledge of understanding what is behind long-term change. The evidence behind coaching for behavioral change is massive. In fact, there are over 90 clinical studies that have been done in this area. And to make the long story short, it works. And we know that it works because we have all of the evidence. The origins of this goes back to the late 1970s and early 80s. With the advent of the addiction movement, particularly in alcohol cessation. And there are two pioneers in that field who really, two psychologists who led the charge by the name of Milner and Rolnick. And they wrote and developed a field called motivational interviewing, an evidence-based behavioral change framework that was developed by these two clinical psychologists in the early 80s, and for which the entire field of health and wellness coaching, evidence-based, is founded. And they describe motivational interviewing as a collaborative, goal-oriented style of communication with particular attention to the language of change. It is designed to strengthen personal motivation for and commitment to a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own reasons for change within an atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. My invitation to all of you today is to perhaps expand what might have been your already known ideas of health and wellness coaching, and think more broadly on the principles behind it and its applications. So, in a nutshell, long-term change is non-prescriptive. For it to be impactful, it needs to be guided and supported, non-directive, with active listening and rolling with resistance. Designed to empower people to change by drawing out their own meaning, importance, and capacity for change. Respectful and curious, a way of being with people that facilitates the natural process of change and honors client autonomy. It needs to cultivate an environment in which the individual can arrive at his or her own decisions on the next best step forward. And finally, it is a process that fosters opportunities to see things differently and, as a result, act differently. So in the coaching space, these are the type of questions that we would normally see interacted between a coach and a coachee. And if you notice the questions, they're open-ended. They're not closed-ended questions. These are not questions that can be answered with a yes or a no, but rather these are quite engagement, and we're going to see why. So if we see here, this is a that's been developed by the Mayo Clinic, which they call the 3 E's. And this really details the process and the coaching process, and one supports and guides individuals towards that change. First phase of it, we learn, and in that phase, we become interested in building the relationship. And this can be both on a one-to-one level, coaching level, and even wider applications such as program, education and training, and other applications. Phase of this, we are in that exploration, we are important to the individual or the group of people. What are their strengths and desires? And this is fundamental to understanding, empathetic in that moment with the other person or persons at the other nation, as opposed to being or even prescriptive. It really looks to understand important on the other side. In the third phase of this process, we help to facilitate a vision. Everyone has a vision of themselves into the future. And it is important that they verbalize very specifically and they explicitly discuss this. Furthermore, what's really important about the facilitation of a vision, if we think about it as a horizon, a vision is just that. It's something that sits on the horizon. And as we move forward in the process of long-term change, that horizon changes because our vision slowly begins to be replaced by additional facts that broaden and enrich the previous vision. Finally, there's a piece to this that's really very basic. It's called trial and error. That is to say, how do we transform values and desires into actions? And how is it that we experiment with that? In the coaching process, we help others to understand if their vision, if we take the metaphor of a staircase, if their final vision outcome is at the top of that staircase, is it the case that if perhaps we fall back 2 steps, we have left out the entire staircase? And the answer is no. We've covered so far what we've covered. And setback help people understand in failure. And finally, how to support lasting change and in the evolutionary. And once we've achieved certain outcomes, we begin the again. It is a cyclical, absolute cyclical process. If we understand that the goals, which are important to consider in all contexts, understand that the client is his own expert, that the relationship between those providing the support and the guidance, in the first instance, the coach, is a dynamic collaboration, that we are strength-based focused, and most importantly, we're grounded in evidence-based, in other words, best practice. So I love this quotation, very, very simple and straight to the point, by the Harvard psychologist Susan David, an expert on change, who describes process. And if we take all of the factors involving long-term behavioral change, how it's been developed, motivational interviewing, and coaching process, we should consider change is not scripted, self-directed. And I would invite her mean for the way engage, explore, help others in their, and we also support their experimentation pathways that can lead them, and most importantly, how we applaud them, how we shepherd them, of always they are the expert on their own life. Truly very, very interesting to consider is doing what is important and intrinsicable engine behind engagement, a term change. I'd like to pause here and have you reconsider, and I'll repeat it again. Doing what is important and intrinsically valuable, the engine behind engagement, all the way to long-term change. How might that, from our existing perceived notions on how it is that we get people to change? If we understand that if we do tap into what is important to another human being, people, how might that change the way that we engage with them and the way that the various possibilities that are available to change, stay with the change, and thrive? Thirdly, habits, negative or automatic. And this is something important for us, and most importantly, to a lot of what's in terms of what makes people change. I would suggest and that no one makes sense. It is utterly self-direct. No matter how much I might say to someone, you need to do A, B, and C. In fact, the saying to people that they need to do something actually has the opposite effect and takes them in the opposite direction. What we do know about habits is that they're automated, whether they're positive or negative. In order to encourage positive habits, we do more of the same, and we help people nudge and lean into those. Negative habits, we create something that's called friction. So as an example, if I have a sweet tooth and I like to raid the refrigerator at 10 o'clock in the evening, how might I create friction so that the next time I go at 10 o'clock in the evening to raid that refrigerator, I simply don't? And the answer is really very simple. You have nothing in that refrigerator that would actually be a detriment to your ultimate outcome. Because very few people that I know would leave their home at 10 o'clock at night and drive to the supermarket to satiate their sweet tooth. So I think you understand the point. By not having it, you're creating friction. It becomes difficult to continue to do that type of behavior. Conversely, if I add positive attributes to something that I want to enforce, how does that create the long-term change? If, for example, I live by a lake and I've decided that I need to build muscle because I don't like to go to the gym, yet the canoe or the kayak is only 5 minutes away, that's a very positive nudging because it facilitates very easily the activity to do the kayaking. That builds muscle, it's good for cardiovascular health, etc. After a while, I really got to like it if I am this person doing this, and simply from then on, after a certain point, I just do it because it's a habit, and I look forward to doing it because it makes me feel good, and the behavior is reinforced. Fourthly, positive plans and actions that are repeated over time become automated lifestyle habits. Success, lastly, in the change process builds self-efficacy, resilience, and congruence, key to achieving the desired long-term change. And we know that, in fact, building self-efficacy is a process because it does involve the experimentation phase that we talked about before. That we know that the more an individual experiences success with their own self-directed lifestyle habits, the more they feel empowered to continue to do it. The more they have a kind of resilience to be able to deal with adversity. And most importantly, it is congruent with what they like to do and why they do it. And this, at the end of this process, is what builds the capacity for change and the staying power. So if we consider that health and wellness coaching and its principles are key to mental wellness and sustained impactful change, does it stop only with the one-on-one? And my invitation to all of you today is to consider that the principles behind coaching and its evidence-based field of motivational interviewing are widely applicable. They are applicable most importantly on the one-to-one session with the coach. They're applicable in group coaching sessions. I have experimented with this in programming that I've created and built. And I have to say it's very powerful because often in groups, there choose not to speak up, but more than anything, the others in the group are basically voicing very similar experiences that they themselves can hear themselves basically agreeing with. Finally, or thirdly, wellness programming, intake and take-home value. How would I create a wellness program that actually understanding that these guiding principles of motivational interviewing engage, explore, envision, experience, and evolve with the guest on a wellness program? How can I apply this in education and training for service providers? We've all heard in the wellness industry the issues of train, and no matter sometimes the way we think we're being helpful in training others, the behavior doesn't change. And I would suggest to you that partly it's because these type of protocols are being imposed without understanding the basic principles for engagement and exploration. In other words, buy-in from the service provider. And lastly, but not least, how might we provide the right design brief for architects who are designing these environments to truly create nudging elements in the design that foster guidance, that absolutely confirm certain types of behavior, and that discourage others and create friction in that design. If we think about this early on, it absolutely makes a huge difference on the effectiveness on how that environment is in fact produced and how it encourages the change on these programs. And lastly, I left it with this visual, because it's something that we chose from a few, actually May of 2022, when we did a collaboration with these other initiatives. And I thought this was a perfect explanation or visual to help us understand that at the end of the day, the long-term behavioral change is guided in a interdisciplinary way, and it's absolutely supported and fostered by the environments and ecosystems in which we live. So thank you, and I'll take any questions if there are any. Jerry, if you have some.
Thank you, Alina, for a really concise overview. And excuse me, if there are questions, then let's hear them. Kiko, Lara's waving there, or she's clapping, I think, with an emoji. Did you have a question, Lara, or was that just support? Not just support, but support. Any questions?
That was Kiko.
Oh, that was Kiko, was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was
You're
an
sharing the
applause.
same screen. So, Alina, I just, sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. It must have jumped in China and just stayed all the way here to Kuala Lumpur. What struck me was the sort of respectful, non-interfering, non-directive approach, which is very much something that in my training as a clinical psychologist, we saw as part of the Rogerian, Carl Rogers non-directive approach. But this is deeper. It's assuming that the person wants to go somewhere. What is the most important thing in your life? What do you want most? What do you want least? It's giving a structure to a real journey of exploration. And I thought that was really interesting, that it's not just a non-directive approach of, let's see where this goes. And at the end of an hour, here's your bill. But it's really assuming that everyone has a journey and you're accompanying them in the, may not be the first steps, but the next steps in their journey.
That's right, and I love the how you synthesize that, Jerry, because as you know, in our white paper, the seminal piece that we did back in 2017, 2018, we aptly chose the word pathways, and we also explained that everyone has a pathway, a different pathway. And how is it that people choose their own pathway? Well, they do it based on two guiding principles: what they value most, why they value that, and what makes them feel good. This is why they do it. So what may be important in a mindfulness practice or something that is attracting someone, for example, to meditate, might be the forest bathing or the water immersion in another. Both achieve similar outcomes, but they are directed by what attracts me and what I'm engaged by, which means that if I do both of those things and I pursue that, I will stick with it. And eventually, I think about it. For those of us who are coffee drinkers, when you get up in the morning and you drink your coffee, you don't even think the night before, oh, I'm going to get up and drink coffee in the morning. You don't. You just do it. Well, for that person who might be doing the kayaking, for example, they don't think about it either. They just go and do it, provided it's simple to do. This is why there are a lot of statistics on why if you
Simple
live
to
more...
do and self-reinforcing. I do meditation every
Correct.
day. Meditation is my coffee. And I do it because I feel great every time I do it.
Exactly.
Not because I have to or because I force myself into a routine, but it is self-rewarding, which is a point you made right at the beginning.
Exactly.
Erin is saying that she totally agrees. Reduce the barriers and make it as simple to be successful as possible.
Exactly.
Alina? Yes.
Exactly.
Thanks, Erin. Michael Halleck, I see you there. Nice to see your windswept photo there. Anything to say? No. And Michael J, we don't
Yes.
see you there, but
Yeah, I joined a little bit late, so I don't want to
we're
I
very
don't
happy
yeah,
that you joined, Michael. Where are
yeah.
you?
I'm in Bali now.
Okay, great.
Michael, so I'm
Yeah.
curious, do you
Yeah.
have, I understand that you've joined late, but tell me a
Yep.
little bit why you joined. I want to understand, like, what's important to you in this conversation and why you joined. Are you able to share that with us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Well, Kiko invited me to join, and I saw the subject of wellness, and Kiko's invitation and wellness was enough for me to just join. So that's all. And the question of adopting positive habits is also very, very interesting, very important. So I've been, reading things like Atomic Habits, and so I'm very much in line with what you're saying, and I do things like put the yoga mat out next to the bed, or prepare the
Yeah.
things the night before, and yeah, and like going for a walk, I don't even think about it. I just do it, and but it took some time before that was
Yeah.
that was, but again, it was one of those things I enjoy, and it's self-reinforcing, self-rewarding.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
is not to say that I'm able to do everything that I aspire to do, but definitely I've made some progress.
Well, and thank you for
I'd like
sharing
to
that.
say, can I just jump in here? I'd like to say that Michael Hallock is a renowned Watsu therapist and master who really takes people on accelerated journeys in a completely
Thank you.
free-floating way that is guided but unguided. Michael guides them through the water and through the Watsu technique of gentle acupressure. But what that catalyzes is a huge and fast inward journey. I've experienced that myself in Bali at Five Elements when Kiko and Lara were there. And this is a real example of a wellness journey and wellness transformation in
Thank
a
you.
nonverbal way.
Yeah. So thank you for that comment, Jerry. I didn't know, Michael, I didn't know your work, and I'm happy that Jerry has brought it up. So I want to be able to comment on what you just said. So what you've described are different points of engagement, right? In what would be a kind of a long-term change journey. You've even identified 3 or 4 different points on that. You were invited by a close friend whose opinion you trusted, but more importantly, the motivation behind it was more than just the invitation from a friend, because it spoke to issues that are important for you. And it is that first point of engagement that is critical, that all of us here, that is the critical piece that we need to be able to connect with others, either as individuals or as a group, that really begins the space of the process and ultimately the impact. And with that, I want to thank all of you for being on the call today, and looking forward to the next of our webinar series. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.